Hey, Socrates, what brings you to the King's Court? You're not involved in a lawsuit, are you?
Not a lawsuit, Euthyphro. The Athenians call it an indictment.
What? Don't tell me someone's pressing charges against you. I can't imagine you'd be the one doing the prosecuting.
You're right, I'm not.
So someone's after you then?
That's right.
Who is it?
I barely know the guy myself. He's a young man named Miletus from the Pittis district. You might remember him. He's got a beaky nose, long straight hair and a scruffy beard.
Sorry, doesn't ring a bell. But what's he charging you with?
What's he charging me with? Well, it's pretty serious actually. Shows the guy's got some guts, I'll give him that. He claims he knows how young people are being corrupted and who's doing the corrupting. I reckon he must be some kind of genius. He's figured out that I'm the opposite of a wise man, and now he's accusing me of messing with his young friends' minds. The state's going to be the judge of all this. You know, out of all our politicians, he seems to be the only one starting off on the right foot, focusing on nurturing virtue in the youth. Like a good farmer, he's taking care of the young plants first, clearing out us troublemakers who might damage them. I guess after that, he'll move on to the older folks. If he keeps this up, he could end up doing a lot of good for society.
I hope you're right, Socrates. But I've got to say, I'm worried it might turn out the other way around. In my view, by going after you, he's striking at the very heart of our city. But tell me, how exactly does he say you're corrupting the young?
It sounds pretty wild when you hear it. He says I'm some kind of god maker, inventing new gods and not believing in the old ones. That's the basis of his indictment.
I get it, Socrates. He's probably targeting you because of that inner voice you say you hear sometimes. He thinks you're coming up with new religious ideas and he's dragging you to court for it. He knows accusations like that tend to sway public opinion. I've been there myself. When I speak in the assembly about divine matters and predict the future, they laugh at me and think I'm crazy. But everything I say is true. They're just jealous of people like us. We've got to stand our ground and face them head on.
My friend, being laughed at isn't such a big deal. The Athenians, I think, don't really care much if they think someone's clever, as long as he's not trying to teach his ideas to others. But if they think someone's not only smart, but also sharing that wisdom, then they get angry. Maybe out of jealousy, as you suggest, or for some other reason.
Well, I'm not too worried about how they feel about me one way or the other.
Maybe that's because you keep to yourself and don't share your knowledge much. But I've got this habit of talking to anyone who'll listen. I'd even pay for an audience if I had to. I'm afraid the Athenians might find me too chatty. Now, if they just laughed at me like you said they do at you, it might actually be kind of fun to spend time in court. But if they're serious about this, well, only you prophets know how it'll turn out.
Don't worry, Socrates. I'm sure it'll all blow over and you'll win your case. I think I'll win mine too.
Oh, you've got a case too? Are you the defendant or the prosecutor?
I'm the prosecutor.
Who are you going after?
You're going to think I'm crazy when I tell you.
Why? Is the defendant some kind of escape artist?
Far from it. He's not exactly spry at his age.
Who is it?
It's my father.
Your father? Good grief, man.
That's right.
What are you accusing him of?
Murder, Socrates.
By the gods! Most people wouldn't have a clue about what's just in a situation like this. It must take an extraordinarily wise person to even consider bringing that kind of charge.
You've got that right, Socrates.
I'm guessing the victim must have been a relative. Obviously, you wouldn't be going after your dad for killing a stranger, would you?
That's pretty funny, Socrates, that you think it matters whether the victim was a relative or a stranger. The real question is whether the killing was justified. If it wasn't, then you've got to press charges, even if the killer shares your home and eats at your table. The pollution is the same either way if you knowingly associate with a murderer instead of clearing both yourself and him by taking legal action. Anyway, the guy who died was a labourer of ours. We had a farm on Naxos and he worked for us there. One day he got drunk and got into an argument with one of our household slaves and ended up killing him. My father tied him up hand and foot, threw him in a ditch and sent someone to Athens to ask a religious expert what to do with him. In the meantime, he didn't bother checking on the guy or taking care of him at all. He figured, he's a murderer, so what's the big deal if he dies? And that's exactly what happened. The cold, hunger and chains killed him before the messenger got back from the expert. Now my whole family's mad at me for taking the murderer's side and prosecuting my father. They say he didn't really kill the guy, and even if he did, the dead man was a murderer anyway, so I shouldn't care. Plus, they say it's unholy for a son to prosecute his father for murder. It just shows how little they understand about what the gods think of right and wrong.
Hold on a second, Euthyphro. Are you so sure about what's right and wrong when it comes to the gods that you're not worried you might be doing something unholy by taking your father to court?
If I wasn't absolutely clear on all this stuff, Socrates, I wouldn't be any good at what I do.
Well then, my esteemed friend, the best thing I can do is become your student. Before my trial with Meletus begins, I'll challenge him and say, look, I've always been really interested in religious questions, and now that you're accusing me of making stuff up and being innovative about religion, I've become Euthyphro's student. If you approve of him and think he knows what he's talking about, then you should cut me some slack too. If not, you should go after him, the teacher, instead of me, the student. He's the one corrupting both me, an old man, and his own elderly father by lecturing and punishing us. If Meletus doesn't listen and still comes after me, I'll just repeat this challenge in court.
Sure, go for it, Socrates. If he tries to indict me, I bet I can find some dirt on him and we'll end up talking more about him in court than me.
That's exactly why I'm so eager to be your student, my friend. I can see that while others might hesitate to challenge Meletus, you've spotted his weak spot right away and know just where to hit him. Now please enlighten me about the nature of piety, especially when it comes to murder and other religious offences. What exactly is piety? Isn't it always the same in every action? And isn't impiety always the opposite of piety, always the same with itself, with one essential nature that makes anything impious?
Of course, Socrates.
Well then, what would you say piety and impiety is?
All right, I'll tell you. Piety is doing what I'm doing right now. Prosecuting someone who's guilty of murder, sacrilege, or any similar crime, whether it's your father, mother, or anyone else. Not prosecuting them is impious. And listen, Socrates, I'll give you a clear example of how this principle is already recognized in religious tradition. People consider Zeus to be the best and most righteous of the gods, yet they admit that he imprisoned his own father Kronos for unjustly swallowing his children. Kronos himself had punished his father for similar reasons. But when I go after my father for his crime, they get angry with me. So they're being inconsistent in how they judge the gods and how they judge me.
Is this why I'm being charged with impiety, Euthyphro? Because when people tell stories like this about the gods, I find them hard to accept. Is that why they're saying I'm in the wrong? Well, if you, who know so much about these things, believe in them too, I guess I'll have to agree. What else can I say, admitting that I don't know anything about it myself? But tell me, for Zeus's sake, do you really believe all this happened?
Yes, Socrates, and even more amazing things that most people don't know about.
And do you believe there's been actual warfare among the gods, with terrible feuds and battles and all sorts of things like the poets talk about, and that we see illustrated in the decorations of our temples? Are we really supposed to accept all these tales as true?
Not just those. As I said before, I can tell you many other stories about the gods that would blow your mind.
I don't doubt it. You can tell me those another time when I'm not so busy. But for now, could you please give me a clearer answer to my earlier question? When I asked you what piety was, you only told me that it's what you're doing now, charging your father with murder.
And that's true, Socrates.
Maybe so, Euthyphro, but there are many other pious acts too, aren't there?
There certainly are.
Remember, I didn't ask you to give me just one or two examples of pious actions. I wanted you to explain the essential quality that makes all pious things pious. You said there's one idea that makes all impious things impious and all pious things pious. Don't you remember?
I do.
Well then, tell me what this idea is, so I can use it as a standard to judge whether any action of yours or anyone else's is pious or not.
Okay, if that's what you want.
It's exactly what I want.
Well then, what's dear to the gods is pious, and what's not dear to them is impious.
Excellent, Euthyphro. You've given me the kind of answer I was looking for. Whether it's true or not, I can't say yet, but I'm sure you'll back up your words with evidence.
Absolutely.
Come on then, let's examine what we're saying. An action or a person that's dear to the gods is pious, while an action or a person that's hateful to the gods is impious. They're not the same, but exact opposites of each other, isn't that right?
That's right.
And does that sound like a good definition to you?
I think so, Socrates. That's what we said.
Haven't we also said that the gods often disagree with each other, Euthyphro? That they have arguments and differences?
Yes, we did say that.
But what kind of disagreement causes hostility and anger? Let's think about it this way. If you and I disagreed about which of two numbers was greater, would that make us enemies? Wouldn't we just count and quickly settle our difference?
Of course.
And if we disagreed about the relative size of things, we'd measure them and end our disagreement quickly, right?
That's right.
And if we had a dispute about weight, we'd use a scale to resolve it.
Obviously.
So what kinds of things would we disagree about that we couldn't easily resolve, causing anger and hostility between us? Maybe you don't have an immediate answer, so let me suggest one. Isn't it questions of right and wrong, good and evil, honourable and dishonourable? Aren't these the issues that, when we can't come to a satisfactory agreement, make you and me and everyone else argue?
Yes, those are definitely the kinds of disagreements that lead to arguments.
And the gods, if they disagree, would disagree about these same things, right?
They would have to.
So by your reasoning, different gods consider different things to be just, honourable, good, or right. They wouldn't argue with each other if they didn't disagree about these things, would they?
You're right.
And each of them loves what they consider good and right and hates the opposite.
Certainly.
But you say that the same things are considered just by some gods and unjust by others, and that they argue about this. That's why they fight and quarrel with each other, right?
That's right.
So the same things are loved by some gods and hated by others. They could be both dear to the gods and hateful to them at the same time.
It seems so.
And therefore, by this logic, the same things would be both pious and impious.
I guess that follows.
So you haven't really answered my question, my friend. I didn't ask you to tell me something that could be both pious and impious at the same time. It looks like what's dear to the gods is also hateful to them. So, Euthyphro, it wouldn't be surprising if by punishing your father, you're doing something that's pleasing to Zeus but displeasing to Kronos or Uranus, something that Hephaestus likes, but Hera doesn't. And you might find the same kind of disagreement among other gods too.
But Socrates, I don't think there's any disagreement among the gods about this. Anyone who kills someone unjustly should be punished.
Hold on, Euthyphro. Have you ever heard anyone arguing that a person who killed someone unjustly or did any other wrong shouldn't be punished?
On the contrary, that's what people are always arguing about, especially in court. They do all sorts of wrong things, and then they say and do everything they can to avoid punishment.
Do they actually admit they did wrong, Euthyphro, and still say they shouldn't be punished?
No, they don't.
So they don't make the argument that if they're guilty, they shouldn't be punished. Instead, they say they're not guilty, right?
You're right.
So they're not really arguing that the wrongdoer shouldn't be punished. They're arguing about who the wrongdoer is, what they did, and when they did it.
That's true.
And don't the gods face the same issue if they really do argue about right and wrong, as you say, with some saying an action is right and others saying it's wrong? Because surely, my dear Euthyphro, no god or human would dare to say that someone who has done wrong shouldn't be punished.
Yes, what you're saying is generally true, Socrates.
But I think people argue about each act that's in question, both gods and men, if the gods do actually argue. They disagree about whether an action was just or not. Isn't that right?
Absolutely.
Well then, my dear Euthyphro, tell me what proof you have that all the gods think that guy who worked for you died unjustly. He was a murderer himself, was arrested, and then died in chains before the religious expert could tell your father what to do with him. What makes you so sure that it's right for a son to press charges against his father on behalf of a guy like that? Go ahead. Try to show me clearly that all the gods definitely believe this action of yours is right. If you can prove that, I'll never stop praising your wisdom.
That might be a long process, Socrates. But I could explain it to you very clearly if I wanted to.
I get it. You think I'm slower to understand than the judges. You'll obviously show them it was unjust and that all the gods hate that sort of thing.
I'll show them clearly enough, Socrates, if they just listen to me.
They'll listen if they think you're a good speaker. But something occurred to me while you were talking, and I'm asking myself, even if Euthyphro could prove to me that all the gods think this death was unjust, how would that teach me what piety and impiety really are? This particular act might be disliked by the gods, but we've already seen that what's hateful to the gods can also be pleasing to them. So I'll let you off the hook for this one, Euthyphro. If you like, let's just assume all the gods think this action is wrong and they all hate it. But now we need to correct our definition a bit. Let's say that what all the gods hate is impious, and what they all love is pious. And what some gods love and others hate is neither pious nor impious, or maybe it's both. Is this how you want us to define piety now?
Well, what's stopping us from defining it that way, Socrates?
Nothing on my end, Euthyphro, but you need to examine whether this definition will make it easier for you to teach me what you promised.
Well, I'd say that what all the gods love is pious, and what they all hate is impious.
Should we examine this idea to see if it's right, or should we just accept it and take our own word and other people's at face value?
We should examine it, but I think this statement is correct.
Think about this. Do the gods love what's pious because it's pious, or is it pious because they love it?
I don't understand what you mean, Socrates.
Let me try to explain more clearly. We talk about things being carried and carrying, being led and leading, being seen and seeing. You understand that in all these cases, there's a difference, and you know what that difference is, right?
I think I do.
And isn't the thing that's loved different from the thing that loves?
Of course.
Now tell me, is something carried because someone carries it, or for some other reason?
No, that's the reason.
And something is led because someone leads it, and seen because someone sees it.
Definitely.
So someone doesn't see something because it's visible. Rather, it's visible because someone sees it. And someone doesn't lead something because it's led. It's led because someone leads it. And someone doesn't carry something because it's carried. It's carried because someone carries it. Do you see what I'm getting at, Euthyphro? I mean that any action or state of being acted upon implies that something caused that action or state. It's not in that state because it's becoming that way, but it's becoming that way because of the state it's in. Do you agree?
Yes, I do.
Isn't being loved an action or a state of being acted upon?
Yes.
So the same principle applies here as in the previous examples. The thing that's loved isn't loved because it's in a state of being loved. It's in a state of being loved because something loves it.
That's right.
Now, what do we say about what's pious, Euthyphro? Isn't it loved by all the gods, according to your definition?
Yes.
Is it loved because it's pious, or for some other reason?
No, that's the reason.
So it's loved because it's pious, not pious because it's loved?
It seems so.
But what's dear to the gods is loved by them and is in a state of being loved by them precisely because they love it, right?
Of course.
Then what's dear to the gods isn't the same as what's pious, and what's pious isn't the same as what's dear to the gods, as you claim. They're two different things.
How do you figure that, Socrates?
Because we agree that what's pious is loved because it's pious, not pious because it's loved, right?
Yes.
But what's dear to the gods is dear to them because they love it, not loved by them because it's dear to them.
That's true.
But, my dear Euthyphro, if being dear to the gods and being pious were the same thing, then if what's pious was loved because of its piety, what's dear to the gods would be loved because of its being dear to them. And if what's dear to the gods was dear because they love it, then what's pious would be pious because they love it. But now you see that these are opposites, entirely different from each other. One is lovable because it's loved, and the other is loved because it's lovable. I'm afraid, Euthyphro, that when I asked you what piety is, you didn't want to reveal its essence to me. You only told me one of its qualities, that the pious has the quality of being loved by all the gods. But you haven't told me what piety really is, so, if you don't mind, please don't hide it from me. Start over from the beginning and tell me what piety really is. Regardless of whether the gods love it or anything else happens to it, we're not going to argue about that. Just tell me, what is piety and impiety?
Honestly, Socrates, I don't know how to express what I mean. Whatever we propose seems to move around in circles and refuses to stay put.
Your ideas sound like they're straight out of my ancestor Daedalus's workshop. If I were the one proposing these ideas, you might tease me and say that's why my arguments keep slipping away and won't stay in place, because I'm related to him. But since these are your ideas, we need to find some other explanation. They certainly do seem to be moving around, as you admit yourself.
I think you're the real Daedalus here, Socrates. My ideas were staying put just fine until you came along.
Then I must be an even greater artist than Daedalus, my friend, because I can make not only my own ideas move, but other people's too. And the funniest part is, I don't even want to be so clever. I'd much rather have arguments that stay put. I'd trade all the skills of Daedalus and all the riches of Tantalus for that. But enough of this. Since you seem to be getting lazy, I'll help you out. Let's see if I can show you how to teach me about piety. Tell me, don't you think that everything that's pious must be just?
Yes.
And is everything that's just also pious? Or is everything that's pious just, but not everything that's just pious? Is piety only part of justice?
I'm not following you, Socrates.
Yet you're younger than me by as much as you're wiser. As I said, you're getting lazy because of your great wisdom. But come on, pull yourself together. It's not hard to understand what I mean. I'm saying the opposite of what the poet said when he wrote, "You will not name Zeus, who created all things, for where there is fear, there is also shame." I disagree with the poet. Should I tell you why?
Please do.
I don't think that where there is fear, there is also shame. Many people who fear diseases, poverty, and other such things seem to me to be afraid, but not ashamed of what they fear. Don't you think so?
I certainly do.
But where there is shame, there is also fear. Is there anyone who feels shame and embarrassment about something without fearing and dreading a reputation for wickedness?
No, they're bound to be afraid.
Then it's not correct to say, where there is fear, there is also shame. We should say instead, where there is shame, there is also fear. But shame is not everywhere that fear is, since fear covers a larger area than shame. Shame is a part of fear, just like odd numbers are a part of numbers in general. So where you find a number, it's not always odd, but where you find an odd number, it's always a number. Do you follow me now?
Perfectly.
This is the kind of thing I was asking about before. I wanted to know whether where there is piety, there is also justice, but where there is justice, there is not always piety. Piety is a part of justice. Shall we say this, or do you have a different opinion?
No, I think that's right. You seem to be putting it correctly.
Now, if piety is a part of justice, we should figure out what part it is. For example, if you asked me what part of numbers are even, I'd say they're numbers split into two equal parts. Simple, right?
I guess.
Now try to explain to me in the same simple way what part of justice piety is, so I can tell Miletus not to wrong me or indict me for impiety, since I've now learned from you what actions are pious and holy and what aren't.
Well, Socrates, I'd say that piety and holiness are the parts of justice that have to do with taking care of the gods. The rest of justice has to do with taking care of humans.
That sounds good, Euthyphro, but there's one small point I still need clarity on. I'm not sure what you mean by taking care of the gods. Surely you don't mean the same kind of care that we give to other things. For example, we wouldn't say that just anyone knows how to take care of horses, but only a horse trainer, right?
That's right.
So horse training is how we take care of horses.
Yes.
And not everyone knows how to take care of dogs, only a dog trainer.
Correct.
So dog training is how we take care of dogs.
Yes.
And cattle raising is how we take care of cattle.
Very true.
And piety and holiness are how we take care of the gods. Is that what you're saying, Euthyphro?
It is.
Now, doesn't all care aim to achieve some good and benefit the object of care? For instance, you can see that horses cared for by the art of horse training are benefited and improved, right?
They certainly are.
And dogs are improved by dog training, and cattle by cattle raising, and so on. You wouldn't say care ever aims to harm what's being cared for, would you?
Of course not.
It aims to benefit the object of care.
Naturally.
So is piety, which is care for the gods, also a way of benefiting the gods and making them better? Would you say that when you do a holy act, you're making one of the gods better?
Of course not. That's not what I meant at all.
I didn't think it was. That's why I asked what you meant by care for the gods, because I didn't think you meant that kind of care.
You're right, Socrates. That's not the kind of care I meant.
All right. But what kind of care for the gods is piety, then?
The kind of care, Socrates, that slaves show to their masters.
I see, so it's a kind of service to the gods?
Exactly.
Can you tell me what result this service to the gods achieves? You must know if you really understand piety better than anyone else, as you claim.
I'm telling you the truth, Socrates.
Then tell me, for heaven's sake, what is that excellent aim that the gods accomplish using us as their servants?
They accomplish many great things, Socrates.
So do generals, my friend, but you could easily sum up what they mainly accomplish. Victory in war, right?
Of course.
Farmers also accomplish many fine things, but the main thing they produce is food from the earth, isn't it?
Certainly.
Well then, how would you sum up all the things that the gods accomplish?
I told you just a moment ago, Socrates, that it's not easy to explain all these things precisely. But in simple terms, I'd say that if a person knows how to say and do things that please the gods in prayer and sacrifice, that's what's holy. This kind of behaviour preserves both private households and public communities. The opposite, things that don't please the gods, destroys and ruins everything.
You could have given me a much shorter answer if you wanted to, but it's clear you're not eager to teach me. You were just about to do it, but you stopped. If you had answered, I might have already learned from you what holiness is, but now the person asking the question has to follow wherever the answerer leads. So what do you say holiness and piety are again? A sort of science of prayer and sacrifice?
Yes, that's it.
And sacrifice is giving gifts to the gods, while prayer is asking things from them.
Exactly, Socrates.
Then holiness, according to this definition, would be a science of asking from and giving to the gods.
You've understood my meaning perfectly, Socrates.
That's because I'm so keen on your wisdom and I'm concentrating all my attention on it, so nothing you say will escape me. So tell me, what's this service to the gods all about? Are we basically asking them for stuff and giving them gifts?
That's right.
So the correct way to ask is to request what we want from them.
Obviously.
And the right way to give is to offer them what they want from us. It wouldn't make sense to give someone something they don't want, would it?
You've got a point there, Socrates.
So piety is basically like a business transaction between gods and humans.
I suppose you could put it that way.
But I'm curious. What do the gods get out of our gifts? It's clear what we get from them. They give us everything good. But how can we give them anything good in return? If they are giving everything, and we're giving nothing, it seems like we're getting the better end of this deal.
Come on, Socrates. You don't really think the gods benefit from our gifts, do you?
Well, if they don't, what's the point of giving them gifts?
It's about showing respect, and like I said before, pleasing them.
So piety pleases the gods but doesn't benefit them or make them happy?
No, I'd say it definitely makes them happy.
So we're back to saying piety is what the gods love.
Absolutely.
And you wonder why your words keep shifting around? You'll probably accuse me of being like Daedalus, making them move. But you don't see that you're an even greater artist, making them go in circles. Look, we're right back where we started. Didn't we say earlier that what's holy isn't the same as what the gods love? Don't you remember?
Yeah, I remember.
But now you're saying what the gods love is holy. Isn't that the same as saying it's dear to them?
I guess so.
So either we were wrong before or we're wrong now.
Seems that way.
Looks like we need to start over and ask again. What is piety? I'll never get tired of trying to figure this out. Please don't blow me off. Really think about it and tell me the truth. If anyone knows, it's you. I've got to keep you here, like Proteus, until you tell me. If you weren't absolutely sure about what's pious and impious, I'm certain you wouldn't risk prosecuting your elderly father for murder over a servant. You wouldn't take such a chance of doing something wrong in the eyes of the gods, and you'd be more concerned about what people think. So I'm sure you know what piety and impiety are. Come on, Euthyphro, don't hide what you know.
Some other time, Socrates. I'm in a hurry and have to go now.
Oh no, my friend. Are you really going to leave me hanging like this? I was hoping you'd teach me about piety and impiety. Then I could have defended myself against Miletus and his charges. I would have told him that Euthyphro had enlightened me, and I'd given up on my reckless new ideas that I only had because I didn't know any better. I could have said I was about to start living a better life.